Testing. Cool. We're in public, and we are alive. Okay, we're alive, and we're talking about societal cycles. Thank God for the mics, so I don't have to shout, because it can be quite loud in public sometimes. So we're just gonna go with the flow, and it is very hot, and I wanted some coffee. And I got an iced coffee. I got an iced cappuccino. I like a good cappuccino, but I was not expecting this. But it's fine. We're going to go for it. We're going to enjoy ourselves, because when it's 40 degrees, why not? Okay? Not bad. Whenever I go to this cafe, whenever I buy a coffee, they give me like a biscuit. Pretty good. So here we are. We're at the cafe. I did not plan for this, but we got the birds in the back. Which I'm happy about. Okay. We got the birds in the back, and we're talking about important stuff. As you can see from the thumbnail, we're talking about societal cycles. Societal cycles, and why it's time to worry. All right. Because I'm pro progress. Progress is good as long as it pushes us towards a good direction. Unfortunately, with progress comes change. And it comes in many ways, and that can be attributed to many, things that happen in society. But these things have cycles, right? And these cycles have different forms, right? They occur in different parts of our existence. There's economic cycles, political cycles, cultural cycles, social movements, all sorts of things. And it's time to worry. It's time to worry because I don't know if you've noticed, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but every aspect of our existence is in chaos. Oh, it's got a cool little... We're in a moment in time where we are projecting a lot of change, and it's going to be very drastic. And a lot of people would like to ignore it. A lot of people would like to ignore it, but that would be silly. It may not seem like it affects you, but it does, right? And these things kind of, these cycles, they interlink, they affect each other. Social cycles will affect political cycles and cultural cycles, and social movements will affect cultural cycles and political cycles, and that will in turn affect economic cycles, and that'll affect how much money you have in your pocket. And unfortunately, these things, at the surface, in their infancy, may not seem like they affect you, or may seem like you can do well by just ignoring it. But at the end of the line, if uncontrolled, if left unchecked, they come for you, right? They come for you. So you have economic cycles. Oh, one sec. Ah, crap. When? Oh, I got a burrito waiting for me, but we're gonna go more into this before I go and eat. I'm sorry, I'm just sorting out this burrito problem. So we okay. We'll have okay. We're gonna get through this. All right. Let's get into it. Economic cycles. With that, you'll have like business cycles. You know, economies tend to go through periods of expansion and contraction. And we can describe our current um, we can describe the current situation as I would argue the end of one of not one of the most prosperous cycle in the history of the world ever. The most prosperous economic cycle ever, which is why you should worry, because the bigger they are, the bigger they fall. And the best we can do is to try and mitigate that. We'll get into that later, right? Cyclical nature is influenced by factors like consumer confidence, investment levels, and government policies, right? We have gone through a time where we've just now received the internet in the past, what, 20 years? Or at least free reign of over the internet over the last, you know, 20 years. You know, before it was available to consumers, it was government tech, military tech, right? Whenever there's like really good tech that's like world changing, military always has access over it. They work out the kinks and then they release it to the general public. Unfortunately, the internet is one of those things where it's kind of a world on its own. It's kind of like an infinity on its own that it's hard to control. We're going through a process of figuring out what exactly we can get with or get without, and what needs to be controlled. Unfortunately, that means probably in the coming times a lot more restrictions. You know that we're already going through a lot of restrictions. Countries are banning apps. Um, Companies are stealing your data, and a lot of nefarious activities going on, which unfortunately affects our freedoms, but not much you can do about that. Or is there? You never really know, right? If you're going through a time of expansion, people are more likely to invest, right? We saw that in all sorts of things, right? In positive ways and negative ways. If there is a company that is providing real value or a new fad, let's say, like AI, companies are going to invest, right? There's real value there. Unfortunately, with things like what do you call it? When the internet first came around, a lot of people really invested hard into internet companies without caring about whether they were profitable. Suddenly, a very big boom with a very big crash known as the dot-com bubble or the dot-com crash, and that kind of thing, you know, contracts the economy. Consumer confidence goes down, investment levels decrease, government policies increase. Suddenly, there's a little less money in the market, right? But we overcame that. Then we have the 2008 crash. We all know about the 2008 crash. Unfortunately, where there is expansion, bubbles form, and then contractions happens because money gets lost. You know, overconfidence enters the market. And then in terms of economic cycles, there's this thing called I don't know how to pronounce this, but the Kondratiev waves. I said it in a Russian accent because the guy is a Russian economist, Nikolai Kondratiev. Kondratiev? Kondratiev. Kondra- These are long-term economic cycles believed to last 40 to 60 years, consisting of alternating periods of high sectoral growth and periods of relatively slow growth, contraction and expansion. These things happen in cycles and waves. And after 2008, we've been doing some pretty good high growth. Okay, and there are certain influences currently that dictate or illuminate uh, a coming wave of slow growth or contraction. Consumer confidence is at an all-time low because of conflicts in the world. Um, the Federal Reserve is printing dollars. No comment on any of that, but that does make the dollar worth less uh, because of the conflict in Ukraine. America is no longer making deals with Russia. Russia is no longer using the petrodollar. Recently in the news, Saudi is moving away from the petrodollar, expanding to different currencies. This affects the dollar. This affects the most powerful economic state in the world. And that affects the rest of us, right? Economic cycles. Moving on to political cycles, regime change, right? 2008, we had Obama. 2016, we had Trump. 2020, we had Biden. 2024, we'll have Biden or Trump. Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. Rise and falls of empires dictate economies. They affect your pockets. If we go towards a more, let's call it, um, left wing, left side of the spectrum, probably more taxes. I mean, I'd say taxes are overinflated. You don't need that much. It breeds ground for corruption, especially when there's a lack of transparency in terms of where that money is being spent, you know? And throwing more money at a problem doesn't always solve it. You see a lot of politicians all the time talking about we're going to be sending money here, and all that does is all that does is line up people's pockets, and it doesn't really affect things at the lower end, right? It's like the most publicly funded schools in America, in the worst schools in America, the worst performing schools in America often have the highest public funding. And an increase in funding doesn't change that. So you'd have to wonder, where's that money going, right? Not that they don't deserve more money, or perhaps more money couldn't solve the problem, but the fact is that more money is not solving the problem. And there's always, you hear about stories all the time, you know, um, you hear these stories all the time where school board members are caught embezzling, you know, and politics has a big effect on that. Taxation, war, war has a big effect on that. During World War II, do you think people were buying things they didn't need? Majority of people were looking for necessities. You know, what's necessary? Can we get it for cheaper? Can we get a tool that does multiple things? Can we save time? Can we be safe? In times of turmoil, those are the kind of things people look for. And you cannot get away with being unnecessary during those times. Policy changes will affect what is necessary. Cultural cycles. There are generational cycles. Sociologists have proposed theories about generational cycles, suggesting that generations tend to alternate between periods of crisis and periods of renewal and stability. When there is cultural unrest, what's necessary will change. What people look for will change. The whys and what, like, if things are in chaos, you look for what's necessary, right? It's a forcing function. You start forgetting about, or not even forgetting about, you start denying luxuries, unnecessary things. And if you do go for luxuries during times of turmoil, you're likely to be criticized. And, you know, cultural renewal and decline. Cultural trends and norms often undergo cycles of change, where periods of conservatism alternate with periods of liberalism and cultural innovation. If you have too much of one thing, you start developing problems, and then you shift the other way, hoping to solve them, and then you go a little too far, and you just keep going left and right. Politically speaking, but that affects everything. Social movements, wave theory. Social movements often come in waves, where periods of intense activism are followed by quieter periods. If there's a lot of social unrest, like the civil rights movements, environmental protections, and other social justice causes, you're likely to be affected by them, at least somewhere down the line. Policy change, economic shifts. You might get fired because your company is not making enough money, because your company is not aligning with the right politics of the time, or social movements, and you might have to downsize. Then you lose your job. Pendulum theory. Societies may swing between periods of progressive change and conservative backlash as new ideas challenge established norms, and vice versa. You just keep swinging, and you cannot rest. Right? If you're resting, you need to be aware that you should only rest when things are quiet. Right? When things are quiet, rest. You want peace. If you want to rest, you want to find moments of peace. If you don't have moments of peace, whether it's economically, politically, culturally, social movements, if you don't have that peace, you cannot rest. And some historical examples are, the French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Civil War, all sorts of things throughout history. The rise of religion in, the Middle East, from Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Things change. The Arabs used to get drunk a lot before Islam. And then Islam came, and then it was banned. Alcohol was banned. And if you're someone that sold alcohol, that would have affected your bottom line. Suddenly, you go from a businessman to a criminal if you still decide to go forward with it. Contemporary applications, technological cycles. The rapid pace of technological advancement often follows cyclical patterns of innovation, adoption, and obsolescence, such as the boom and bust cycles in the tech industry. You get a new tech, suddenly everybody notices the potential. Things you go through a boom, right? There's innovation, companies begin adopting it, and then there's a bit of an obsolescence, but you know there's forced obsolescence, and then there's unplanned obsolescence, right? Like with the light bulb. Um, with the light bulb, there's kind of a planned obsolescence. I think I saw a Veritasium video about it, where he talks about light bulbs being made worse, at least in their early times. Right nowadays, light bulbs can last months. There was a time when light bulbs could last a much longer time, I think, and they were made worser so that people bought more light bulbs. Right. Same thing with like Apple products. Like they got in trouble for um, was it messing with old phones, making them slower, and yeah, people didn't like that. And then there's unplanned obsolescence, where it's like AI is coming right now, right? And how many data entry experts are going to lose their jobs? You know, and here's the thing: not everybody's going to lose their jobs. We're still going to have data entry people. We're just not going to have very many new data entry people because, well, that's just what happens. You'll end up with that's what happens, right? They're just going to want highly trained individuals that know how to that know how the system works, and the AI will just do it for them, and they'll just be there for tech support because AI is not perfect, but if it does 90% of the job okay, and you only need to worry about the 10%, then maybe you only need one guy making sure it does its job, right? Environmental cycles. Environmental changes and policies can also be cyclical, with periods of intense focus on sustainability and conservation alternating with periods of neglect or exploitation. Same thing, right? Sometimes you care, sometimes you don't. And depending on what moment of time you are at, it'll be important on how you gain attention, right? Because I feel like I should have mentioned that before, but that's what this is all about, right? Attention. And it is the currency of today's world. If you can catch attention, you're doing something right. And, that's kind of an overview of what cycles are, right? Let's talk about now. What part of the cycle are we now? Economic cycles, right? We are likely to we're likely at the end of a long expansion phase and entering a contraction phase. We've seen a big boom. Companies have seen a big boom, but now there's too much uncertainty. We had the 2008 crisis, we had the '03 crisis, we had the '08 crisis, and then things have been steadily up. And then, recently, Nvidia just comes up and beats Apple, which, a year ago, that would be crazy to think. Maybe more like 3 years ago, before like OpenAI came with, before AI was a big deal, right? Like we knew we needed processors, but we didn't know we needed processors that bad. Now Nvidia is making a crap load of money, and because of the old cough that happened a few years ago, um, it triggered a recession, followed by a recovery period. But there's rising inflation. You know, money's being printed because of things happening around the world. Um, Supply chain disruptions. Germany isn't using certain products. Russia isn't using certain products. The world is boycotting Israel. Half the world isn't. I'd say most of the world's boycotting Israel. Companies are stopped. Countries. I forget which country. Malaysia, right? Is like banned Israel. People holding Israeli passports from visiting Israel. geopolitical tensions. It seems like every couple of months there's a boat in some canal that just crashes. Boats crash into bridges, things like that. It just seems like there's more and more of that happening. And that wouldn't be as big of a problem during peacetime. It's like accidents happen, right? But if there's supply chain tensions, right? If there's disruptions, if Brexit, right? If we're not getting uh, products, imports, exports the same way, and we're in a transition period, the things that are occurring right now will be more affected by accidents like that, right? And if there's a war in Ukraine, then you can expect instability and things starting to slow down because forces your attention is in a certain way, and you have to kind of slow down everything else because if you stay at a high output and everywhere else in an unstable position, you're likely to experience larger problems, right? It's like Germany during World War II, right? They were starting to spread themselves thin in Europe, and at that point they decide to undertake the incredibly difficult task of trying to fight the Russians in their homeland, where it was incredibly cold, right? And historians believe that Germany just couldn't hack the cold, and their uniforms weren't built for it, and that led to Russia winning, at least that front. There's authoritarianism occurring right now in different parts of the world, uh, democratization occurring where there wasn't. What's that country? In South America that's like recently gotten rid of a lot of gangs, and it's kind of was it? I forget which country. They had a new president. Cuba? Is it Cuba? Um, some president burnt like $67 million dollars of cocaine burnt. Cambodia? No, El Salvador. Yeah, El Salvador. Authorities set fire to $67 million worth of cocaine. They've been getting rid of cartel gangs and whatnot, and so on, like that, and that changes things, right? If El Salvador is lowering its crime and making it safer, America has less budget for South America, right? You can't get approved for a higher budget if there's no sign of conflict, right? That's the way the American military works, right? If there's a sign of conflict and it affects national interest, they're more likely to receive funding. And, that affects sectors of government, right? And, you can imagine a few years ago, before the Ukraine war, there wasn't a lot of money in, as much money, let's say, it probably was, but as much money from the America being funded in Europe, right? Probably more where there was higher conflict, like the Middle East, Pakistan. But now that there's, America pulled out of Afghanistan, was it Afghanistan? Yeah, America pulled out of Afghanistan. There's less now Afghanistan, and that switched over to Israel and Palestine, and there's more money now in Europe as well. It's kind of like, priorities change, so where money goes changes too. And that is directly affected by political cycles. If we're at war, there's instability, there's polarization. People are more likely to vote left or right based on their own experience and their own backgrounds, and the information that they're, quite frankly, that is available to them, or whatever they believe. You know, two people may receive the same information but decide to perceive it differently because of what experiences they've gone through. So whoever gets voted in will have certain priorities in terms of government and international politics, and that affects where money goes. Cultural cycles. We are in a phase of cultural upheaval and redefinition. Social movements such as Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and global climate strikes reflect significant cultural shifts and a push for progressive change. People want change. People want uh, people want things to progress in terms of at least culture. In terms of tech, people want to slow down, but in terms of culture, people want to speed up. There was a heightened focus on social justice, equity, and inclusion, countered by conservative backlash in some areas, right? You have social justice, equity, and inclusion trying to push things, and conservatives pushing the other way. And it's not like, you cannot say, you cannot dictate whether someone is evil or not based on what side of the political spectrum they're on. Because everybody has their own experience on things, and depending on what state of the cycle you're in, you know, people are not going to see solutions to problems the same way. As some people may say, we need more taxes, and some people say, no, in fact, we need less taxes. Social movements. We are experiencing an intense wave of activism and societal change. The past decade has seen widespread protests and movements advocating for gender equality, racial justice, environmental sustainability, and political reform. These movements often face resistance, suggesting a period of contention and potential transformation. People want to move one way, other people don't want to move that way. They don't believe in the solutions that are being presented, uh, and not every loud voice is a good faith actor. So it's hard to say, especially in the information age. It's difficult. It's difficult to come to conclusions without someone saying that that you're evil on either side. Historical and contemporary context, rise and fall of civilizations. Some historians suggest we might be witnessing signs of strain in Western liberal democracies, analogous, analogous, whatever, to historical periods of decline in great civilizations, but this is debated. Quite possibly, we are at um, a significant transformation period, and you can't tell which way it's going to go. You don't know who's going to win. Revolutions and reforms. The current era may be comparable to other revolutionary periods marked by significant social and political upheaval, potentially leading to substantial reforms or shifts in government. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've kind of hammered this, that, yeah, there's a lot going on, and a lot of people are affected, and there's a lot of voices. And whether it's from the left or right, it bodes well to be aware. If you're not aware, if you think all this politics stuff, these capitalists and these conservative versus these liberals and communists, they can do their thing. I've got my job, I've got my family. Well, no, it affects you, and we're at a very significant transition period, and people are aware. People are aware, and they should be. People should be aware. And they need to start taking sides, at least by making the most rational decisions. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about attention, right? Why does societal cycles, why is it important, right? Why am I talking about this? I'll get to that. I've got a beef burrito waiting for me, so I'm trying to get through this fast, but not too fast. I've also got to take a piss. Okay, technological environmental cycles. Technological cycles. We're in a phase of rapid technological innovation and disruption. Advances in AI, renewable energy, and digitalization are transforming industries and societies, though these are accompanied by challenges such as job displacement and privacy concerns. You might lose your job. You should worry. Companies are selling your privacy. Your privacy is for sale. Oh, what was that thing? Um, what's that Elon Musk thing? Starship, something like that. They gave internet to colonies that have never had the internet, and they immediately became addicted to social media and porn. All right, so it tells you it, it tells you exactly you know what the negative effects of these are, right? Especially if you're not aware, if you're not worried about these things. This is what happens if you don't have the information to save yourself from all the negative effects of everything that comes. You're going to be affected, and you're not even going to realize it's happening to you, right? Yeah, environmental cycles. Everybody's making policies towards sustainability and green energy. That's the big thing. A lot of obstacles too. Companies don't want to switch because it's too expensive and it affects everything, right? So it's complex. It's very complex economically, politically, culturally, socially. We are at a transition point in many of these cycles, right? If you look at social, like we had riots, politically, left and right are constantly fighting culturally. You know, there's a lot of shifts and contestations. People want culture to move one way, the other side doesn't want to. And there's a lot of activism and there's a lot of transformation going on that's affecting policy, that's affecting economics. So all these things are in such a unstable position where things are constantly transforming, they're constantly affecting each other. This tells us that things need to change quickly before something drastic happens. Okay, how does this affect attention? How does this affect attention, right? We live in an attention economy. You know, how does a company deal? How does a person deal with this, right? If everything's online, right? That's the main way of getting, like, because of the internet, we're all connected to each other, and that's allowed us to scale. That's allowed us to scale. But if everything's affected, the things that we need to focus most on are attention online, right? And you'll see, with that propaganda machines and things like that. Was that Cambridge Analytica, the Trump scandal? You know, misinformation. Economic cycles get affected. Consumer attention shift toward value and necessity. We're at a time of turmoil, so let's focus on what's necessary because we don't want wastage. Because we don't know what accident could happen, what ship could crash in a canal, and then we don't have our Amazon packages or whatever, right? In terms of attention, you become price sensitive and cautious about spending. Marketing strategies shift to value proposition, emphasis on affordability, discounts, value for money. Product positioning highlight essential and practical benefits, right? Emotional appeal, focus on security, reliability, savings. Political cycles. Political instability and polarization can lead to fragmented attention. People are worried about the news, so they're not going to watch your ads with as much attention. They're not going to be focused on that as much as they're focused on the news, right? Because they're going to be focused on what affects them. Attention is fleeting and limited. There's only so much you can kind of focus on at one time. You know, if you're going through a time of peace, you're more likely to catch something that might be more fun. But if you're going through a time of turmoil, polarization, you're going to be competing with people's needs. And Maslow's Maslow's hierarchy teaches us that some things will come first. And that'll be true for most people, and you do not want to wait around for the idiots to say yes to whatever luxury you're whipping around. You know, so some companies might align themselves with social responsibility. They might change their logo once a year for a month. You know, neutral messaging. Sometimes companies are like, no, we don't want to align with anything in an attempt to alienate segments of our audience. You know, you can see that with Israeli products. You know, companies are trying, like there was like this thing in Coca-Cola, right, in Bangladesh. They're trying to lower their perceived ties with Israel, so that people buy more cola in Bangladesh. You know, because that affects their bottom line. And American politicians don't want Russian oil. And so companies see that. They're like, we don't align ourselves because what the hell does laundry detergent have to do with war in the Middle East or in Europe? You know, like maybe let's just stay out of this. So people buy our product. Engagement. Use platforms to engage in conversations about political and social issues. Some companies want that. They prefer to be on the right side of history, to their perspective, and they want to align themselves with certain views. And that's in terms of politically, but culturally, companies may incorporate diversity, inclusivity, trends, cultural trends and messaging, contemporary values. You see a lot more interracial couples and ads now. Authenticity. You know, companies companies try to pink wash stuff. That's a thing, right? They try to align with just social trends that are happening, cultural trends that are happening to try and seem with it, but it's not always genuine or authentic. And consumers aren't as dumb as companies think. And because of social media, it's much easier to expose lies. Right? Social movements, cause marketing. There was a guy there was a company that donated shoes, right? People wanted to align with that, so that more African kids had shoes, and that can affect marketing. He made a lot of money with that. Community building. If you feel like perhaps you're on the right side of history, but people aren't listening, you might want to build a community, and companies may want to represent that community and build a loyal fan base or audience or consumer base. Transparency. If the brand is transparent, with their contributions to social causes, people may want to associate with them more. Technological and environmental cycles. So, in terms of technology, you might want to talk about how innovative you are. You might want to talk about the fact that you're moving away from the past, you're going towards the future, and it makes you look more future-proof. And that's, in times of turmoil, that's ensuring. That's helpful, especially for investors. Sustainability, if people are more worried about, at least in pockets, sustainability, don't. If a company is polluting your lake, you might be very worried about sustainability. So if another company wants to come there and promises certain things like we won't dump in your lake, and we're gonna make sure things are safe, and we're gonna lower our carbon emissions. You might be willing to go with that company more. And digital platforms help you get to consumers better. Like companies may decide to make social media accounts to make sure that they're getting right direct to their consumer base, and they're not missing out by using old forms of advertising, marketing, things like that. And because of technological advancements, you get data-driven insights, agility and adaptability. You can quickly change your marketing depending on quick changes, and you want that, especially during times of turmoil. You want to be constantly changing your marketing strategy, because what's necessary will be constantly changing, because there's so many different cogs at play, and each one affects each other, and each one will be at a different cycle. But depending on what's happening in the news or in society, it changes. And another cycle may be at a different point, and it could affect how fast one cycle moves or it doesn't, right? It's time to worry. Personalization, yeah, things need to be personalized. They need to be very specific, and they need to be solving very specific problems. Otherwise, you'll be missing the mark. Stories are important when you are going through turmoil. Depending on what kind of stories you can compel, with narratives that resonate. And during the war, resilience was big, right? World War II. So companies had to take that into account and use that in their marketing. And because there's so many different channels available now, companies have to stay on all of them. They have to be everywhere, ever present. They have to be on Facebook, they have to be on Instagram, they have to be on X. And that affects, depending on how many platforms you're on. Some people just use one, some people use two, some people use all. And so by denying yourself different platforms, you are stopping yourself from reaching larger market. But also, you may not want to use TikTok because of policies in which countries ban them, or you might not want to use Instagram because of the radical comment sections. Like during World War II, patriotic themes, propaganda, rationing, substitution and creativity in foods, recycling and conservation were big. Donations, comfort items, you could donate to soldiers, support for the troops, women's role, workforce participation, home for contributions, all of that. Escapism was big. Movies, radios, all these things were like used to distract people so that they're not always depressed. And more people are likely to opt in for that because there's so much going on. If you have entertainment that takes your mind off of the difficult things that are happening, you might be more likely, more more wanting escapism. Coca-Cola did pretty well, during the war. General Motors, war bonds. Modern marketing, aligning with national and social causes. That's what companies do. Resourcefulness in challenging times, and shared values, right? But nowadays, basic necessities, affordability, quality and durability, ease of access, time-saving solutions, stress relief, connection and community, health and safety, financial security, ethical consumption, local and small businesses, multi-use products, flexible services, emphasis on value and quality, essentials, convenience, emotional support, safety and security, sustainability, innovation. All these things are important now, right? These are the things that people are more focused on. In times of turmoil, what will sell is what is necessary. And so depending on what market you're in, you're gonna want to tap in to what kind of challenges societal cycles are affecting it by, right? And if you can catch the cycle at the correct time, if you can recognize what different cycles will affect it and what's incoming, you can use that and gain a lot of attention for your product. And if it's genuinely valuable, it's going to be very easy, right? If your product is valuable to a certain niche and it hits the right kind of cycle, and you market using very specific copywriting for that moment in time with that problem, and you use the right kind of hooks, you're in the gold, you're in the green. You find your golden nugget. That's what that is. You have to be testing for that. You have to stay in the pocket. Manufacturing and production. Oh, this is a different thing. Jobs likely to be affected by AI. That's different. I'm going to be getting into that later, right? And that's what I wanted to talk about. I've been in a bit of a period, right? I'm like, what's necessary now? And why is that important? If you would like to be necessary, you have to know what you're targeting and what part of the societal cycle we're at, right? Right now, we're at a time of turmoil. People are printing, governments are printing money, your money's worth less. Import-export is being affected by political policies and war and conflict. All these things are affecting your bottom line as consumers. And you have to be aware of that. As someone trying to gain attention. If you can gain attention by highlighting these issues and recognizing how to solve them, right? If you can highlight a real problem people are really worried about during a time of turmoil, you are likely to get a good amount of attention, right? And that's the thing. That's the thing about virality, right? You could, a cat doing a backflip, right, could go viral. A cat doing a backflip could go viral, but what does that say about anything? That's more of that escapism thing, right? And that's probably why we're seeing a lot of people doom scrolling, a lot of people being addicted to porn, a lot of people addicted to social media, because there's so much going on. Because there's so much going on, people are more likely to engage in escapism because they feel like they don't have control over things. And one of the ways that you can help people in that time is to show them exactly how they can access control in their current situation, and how they can deal with that feeling of loss of control, how you can save them money, right? If people are going to lose jobs because of AI, quit your job, or start looking elsewhere right now. Start training for a different sector immediately, right? Show people the solution. Or at least, it appears to me that people just aren't worried about AI. People just aren't worried, and they should be. Because along with every single other cycle, the tech cycle is about to be very disruptive. That's going to affect people a lot. And so, for me, that's an opportunity. If things are in turmoil, that's an opportunity to recognize what's necessary. And if people aren't worried about what's necessary, and you are, you have an edge. You have a competitive edge. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for competitive edges. We're edgelords. Pause. And yeah, we're going to kick its ass. We have now reached an hour. My burrito is probably cold, but I'm going to go eat it anyway. That was Societal Cycles by yours truly. I think I might go live again because I'm in a planning phase, and I really want to get into the pocket of what's necessary. I want to get into the pocket of what's necessary so that I can make the right kind of content that really grabs people's attention, right? On the fringes. You have to know exactly how far on the fringe right? If I start coming in saying, quit your jobs, AI is coming, people are going to see me as like that crazy crackhead at the traffic stop that says the end is nigh with a cardboard sign. But when the meteors hit, that's when people start remembering you. And you don't want to be too early. You don't want to be too late. You want to be just in time. So you have to recognize what point of the cycle you are, even if your ideas are far past where society is currently. You have to be able to kind of like that's the diagnosis, right? Go back a little, go forward a little to the fringes, little to the middle, and then you reach it. You find where you are in the cycle, and that's how you can get people. That's how you can get attention, and you have to worry about everything here, right? You don't need large teams anymore, right? AI has made you redundant. You don't need large teams anymore, and you just need to worry about the bottom line. If you can capture the bottom line, if you can streamline your business, you're in the green. And it's time to worry. And I'm probably going to jump ship from this it's time to worry stuff because I think I'm too soon. I think I'm too soon with this stuff because people just aren't worried. Speaking to my friend, and he's like, I'm not worried about AI. And maybe he's in a good position, and I hope he isn't. I hope he isn't affected, but he could be. And things change very suddenly. So it's important to be aware. I'd like to be aware. People are not worried now, but they will be later, especially since AI is kind of like in its infancy. So people are kind of like, yeah, it's cool and it's disruptive, but there's still time to go. We'll see. We'll see how fast that is. But there are tools right now that you can use as a company, and companies aren't aware of, and you could lose your job. You could lose your job. And the companies that are ahead of this, they're going to survive, and you're not going to. So that's important to note. Okay, well, that's been me. Later, I'm going to be talking about why companies should fire you, why your boss should fire you. It's a little on the nose, but let's see. Let's see how that does. Probably catch some hate, but this isn't a moral issue. This is an economic issue. And if you go down the line enough, you could probably convert it to a moral issue. But if you work in a private company and they're not replacing you with something cheaper and better and faster, they're losing out. And then, maybe it's good for morale to stay on that part, but if they're doing that, they need to make that really apparent in their marketing, because if they're not, then they're setting themselves up for failure. Like, we will not replace our workers with AI. We believe in people. Like, that needs to be very apparent, because if it's not, because it needs to be a selling point, right? It needs to be a selling point. Otherwise, it's a waste, because like the societal thing, right? It is a cultural event. Then it is a social movement, and that needs to be, that people need to know so that they can align with you, right? Otherwise, it's a wasted opportunity. You need to be able to get people's attention on any sort of emotional decision you're making, because that is, as we explained earlier, emotional appeal, and people will align with you, and you may survive, but it needs to be incredibly apparent, and you need to let people know. You can't just do it in quiet, and you need to do it in a way that shows necessity, especially in a time of turmoil. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough out here. But this has been fun. I may return, I may not, but if I do, I will see you later. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. So be good, do good things, and subscribe, and good things happen. And I will see you later.